So thank you for coming, and I do mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my daughter, Taylor. Taylor was a beautiful girl, an absolutely beautiful girl. She was kind, she was really, really smart, and she was wicked funny. Which is why, when we came up with this idea to hold this event, there's nobody better at telling Taylor stories than my mom. And, obviously I'm the way that I am because of my mom. And Taylor had some of that, and I tell you, when you put all of us together, it was just magical. And even the times when Taylor was really sick and at the hospital and we were on the road, we still managed to laugh. And you're going to hear some of those stories tonight because I've asked my mom to come and tell stories. And I don't want you to be sad. Taylor lived. For 10 years, my daughter lived. And she loved life. And Debbie Seitzer-Brain, who is on her way here from Edmarc, said, sometimes the greatest stories are the shortest. And Taylor's was a short story. But I am so glad that I was a part of that. And I'm glad to have you all here tonight. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce my mom, Grandma Jean. And she brought a bottle of water. I love it. Are they going to bring you a shot of honey whiskey in a minute?
I don't know.
You need some liquid courage?
There you go. She wants to end the mic. I do. I'll pick myself. Watch your hand. That's still too tall. Is that too tall?
Yeah.
We didn't practice this.
This is not a comedy version.
The show has begun, so feel free to laugh.
There you go. All right. That's better. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So, thanks for coming.
No, close.
Get up on the mic.
Oh, no. Okay. Now? Good?
Beautiful.
Okay. This has been cramped my style a little bit, but that's okay. So tonight, I get to do one of my favorite things. I get to share some Taylor stories with you. But first, let me tell you about the cakes that I got for Taylor's baby shower. I had to get two to make sure there was room for everything I wanted to say. They said to Amy and Keith, who will be the best parents ever because they haven't forgotten how to play. And after the divorce, Amy married John and Keith married Paula. So Taylor had 4 parents who loved her, 4 sets of grandparents who adored her. And like Amy said, Taylor was smart and sweet and funny and brave and just a little bit snotty. But most of all, Taylor was loved and funny. So when she was about 2, she had a little red and yellow plastic Tyco car that was foot-powered, but she loved for me to push her in it. She would raise her little hand and say, "Green light." We would stop. And then she'd raise her little hand and say, "Green light." And we would go. So she raised her hand, said, "Green light." But we didn't go. So I waited, and I waited. Finally I said, "Taylor, I thought you said that was a green light." She laid her arm on the steering wheel, put her head down, and said, "Traffic." So she was driving this little car one day, and she stopped it, got out, slammed that door, said, "Piece of crap." So at the time when she was having trouble with her R's, her dad, Keith, taught her how to say, "Howard Stone is the king of all media." And Amy taught her that, okay, So Amy taught her that you can never, ever fold laundry without your laundry hat on. John's underwear. And they never did. Oh, at Sunday dinner one night, Taylor had her hand under the table, and John said, "Taylor, what are you doing?" "I'm not feeding the dog." So when she started first grade, she hated to talk about school when she came home. And Amy said one day, "Taylor, just answer one question. Did you have lunch?" Taylor said yes. She said, "Well, what did you eat?" Of course. Taylor said, "No, that would be 2 questions." So when she was about 4, Keith's mom, Grandma Retha, a preacher's wife, was explaining the Easter story to her. And she'd gotten to the part where the women reached the tomb. The stone was rolled away from the entrance. The tomb was empty. And Taylor said, "How come they only let them out once a year?" The 4th of July one year, we went to Fort Monroe to celebrate. And we had a great picnic, we played games, we stayed to watch the fireworks, and then of course we got stuck in that traffic jam in the parking lot. Oh, and everybody was tired. I was sitting in the back seat with Taylor, and I said, "So Taylor, do you know why we celebrated today? Why we had the picnic? Why we had fireworks?" She rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, Grandma, I don't know. It was the first day Uncle Sam ever walked the earth." Yes, that's the perfect answer. But on Friday, December 13th, in 2002, Taylor had a stroke at school. She was 9 years old. The ambulance took her to Centera sent her to CHKD, where they didn't expect her to make it through the night. But she did. And John called that Friday the 13th Taylor's Christmas miracle. And it was for us. We had her for 16 more months. So she was paralyzed on the right side of her body and the left side of her face. She had a feeding tube. And at first she wasn't able to speak. So Uncle Paul rigged up a letterboard so she could communicate with us. And she cracked everybody up because all she would spell were the foods she wanted to eat and the restaurants where we could get them. So 2 months after the stroke, Taylor was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor, stage 4. They got her into a research program in D.C. And the first time they went up, they were medically transported up. Keith and Amy went with her in the medical transport. So do you know that she talked that medical transport driver into stopping at McDonald's? When I went up to visit, for the first time, I got off the elevator on Taylor's floor, and what I heard over the loudspeaker was the parties in Taylor's room, as usual. And it was. And let me tell you, Keith and Taylor had such a good time with that electronic fart machine in the They rigged up a net over Taylor's hospital room door. And the first person who came in would get showered with the balloons. And one night, they took a fluorescent yellow magic marker and painted Taylor's face, then called the nurse and said, "You have to come in here. Taylor's got a rash. We don't know what to do." Oh my God. But when the nurse got to the room, they wouldn't let her turn on the light. They didn't want to wake Taylor, they said. So she crept over to the bed, pulled down the covers, and shone her light on this little polka-dotted grinning face. Oh my God. So after Taylor was able to speak, Amy was opening cards for her, and Taylor would take them and read them, shake them out. Amy said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm looking for money." You'd think, with all these cards, someone would have given me at least $1. So Amy told people, I told people, my next door neighbor came out the next time I was going to the hospital, handed me a card for Taylor. I took it to Taylor, she opened it, read the card to me, and it said, "Dear Taylor, your wish come true. Here's $1 just for you. Love, Mrs. Alexandrov." Sweet. So I said, "Taylor, what do you want to tell Mrs. Alexandrov?" And she said, "Tell her my next wish is for $10. So, at the hospital in D.C., Taylor would have chemo in the morning, then be medically transported to the National Institute of Health for radiation. So this was every day, 5 days a week for 3 months. And with this chemo came steroids, the dreaded Decadron. And Taylor swelled up like the little blueberry girl in Willy Wonka. So Amy was taking Taylor through the drive-thru at McDonald's, and the woman handed the food to Amy through the window and looked in the back seat and saw this little misshapen, swollen, paralyzed little girl. Her left eye was sewed shut, her grin is lopsided. She's strapped into a special harness, and her mouth dropped open. And as they drove away, Taylor said, "You know, you'd think she'd be old enough to know better. But I'm just a kid. I can't help what happened to me. I can't help how I look. And she had buck teeth. You didn't see me staring at her." Oh, so for Taylor's Make-A-Wish trip, they were going to Disney World. And she asked her stepmom Paula one day, "So who all's going on the trip with us?" And Paula said, "Well, it's going to be Daddy and me, and Mommy and John." Taylor said, "Oh, great. One big happy Oh my gosh. So, they went to Disney World, and when they came back, the kids took Taylor to Busch Gardens. And that trip upset her because people were staring at her. They were whispering about her. So she talked to Amy when she got home, and they were trying to figure out what to do about this. And Amy said, "Let me make you a t-shirt that says, 'I have cancer. What's your problem?'" But Taylor said no. Taylor said that would be too mean. So they decided to call the Daily Press, and the Daily Press sent a reporter out who interviewed Taylor, and she hated, because of the way she looked, to have her picture taken. But for this article, she allowed her picture to be taken, and they put it in the paper next to a picture of how she looked before she got sick. She wanted people to know that inside this little girl was still this little girl. She was something else. Taylor died on April 30th, 2004. Amy and John and Keith and Paula loved her, supported her, cared for her, surrounded her with laughter and love. And Edmarc was there to support them. Every painful step of this journey, Edmarc was there with us. They're still here with us. If I needed anything, I could call them and they would help me. They're amazing. We're here tonight to support Edmarc because there are other families who have to make this journey. I have one more Taylor story. So sometimes Taylor was able to come home from the hospital. And on one of these days, I went over to visit, and Taylor was listening to some music, and I walked in and I said, "Oh, Taylor, is that Rod Stewart?" And she said, "Who the heck is Rod Stewart?" But I played her some of my music, and we played rousing classics and peaceful classics, and we played some Irish music, and Taylor was having none of it. So we listened to her music, and we listened to her favorite group, Creed. And she sang every word of every song. And at one point she said to me, "Grandma, I can hardly breathe, but I can't stop singing." And after I left, Taylor said to Amy, "You know, I love Grandma. She's funny. She's short, funny, and annoying." And that's for Taylor. So thank you. Thank you.